everyone, welcome back to Let Us Lead. I'm your host Bishwadeep Banerjee. As a reminder to all of you, Let Us Lead believes in people centricity and servant leadership. We are trying to build the next generation of managers and leaders here. So if you're not aligned with our mission, our purpose, then please skip this and move on to other things in life that you value. And those who are aligned with our purpose, you can find me on Facebook and Instagram as well. Let Us Lead recently ventured in the podcasting world as well. So although I'm at a very, very early stage there, but you can still find my podcast on Spotify, Anchor, Google Podcast, Amazon Music, Hubhopper, Acast, Breaker, and Kabri as well. All the links are given in the description below for you. So recently I was attending one of the Gallup webinar on manager development, and I really liked some of the perspective that was shared there and backed with sound statistics. And I wanted to share with you all today some of the things that really stuck with me coming out of that webinar. Pretty much all the stats and content that I'll be sharing with you all now are sourced from Gallup. And those of you who do not know what Gallup is an American analytics and advisory company which generates a lot of data and interesting stats all around the year to help out a lot of organizations around the world. So in this video, first I'll be talking about the appalling employee engagement stats, and then moving on to the importance of engagement, and then we'll talk briefly about the contribution of managers in that poor engagement data, and finally we'll talk about the shift that is needed in the management approaches to improve the employee engagement and thereby making your company more resilient, inspiring, and profitable at the same time. All right, so let's get on with this. So I have spoken many times this year about the engagement stats, how vast majority of the employees around the world were found to be disengaged. It is not just Gallup that found out these results, but it were pretty much the same for PwC or McKinsey surveys as well. I also told in a recent podcast, which I uploaded to YouTube as well, in addition to the podcasting platforms, that last 5 to 6 years, engagement has been slowly going up, and it reached around 22% in 2019. But unfortunately, due to the COVID situation, it fell to 20% in 2020. However, the problem remains that we still have 80% people not engaged worldwide. And if you're wondering whether creating a culture of employee engagement is possible or not, then you must remember that I've always said a yes to this question. It is absolutely possible. And this particular data proved what I have been saying for the past 1 year. Overall engagement of organizations which are clients of Gallup have been around 47%. And out of those, clients which follows the best practices proved to be more profitable, resilient during hard times, and inspiring, clocked an employee engagement of 71%. Now, if I remember correctly, I uploaded a complete training video on how to engage your workforce back in May this year. So if you want to know how to engage your staff, your workforce, then you can consider going through that video post this session is over. I will put the link below in the description for you. Now, this slide talks about those 12 areas of question in which high engagement organizations scores high. Basically, Gallup is saying that if answers to these questions are a yes, then you have a highly engaged workforce, or at least likely to have a highly engaged workforce. So let's quickly go through this question list. The number one question is, I know what is expected of my work, right? So those employees who are extremely clear of what is expected of their job role will mark this question as yes, right? Number two question is, I have the materials and equipment I need to do my work right. Question number three is, at work, I have the opportunity to do what I do best every day. Question number four, in the last 7 days, I have received recognition or praise for doing good work from my manager. Question number 5, my supervisor or someone at work seems to care about me as a person? Question number 6, there is someone at work who encourages my development. Question number 7, at work, my opinions seems to count. Question number 8, the mission or purpose of my organization makes me feel my job is very important. Question number 9, my associates or fellow employees are committed to doing quality work. So there's no compromise on quality. Question number 10, I have a best friend at work. Question number 11, in the last 6 months, someone at the work has talked to me about my progress. And the last question, question number 12, was this last year I have had opportunities at work to learn and grow. So you can try surveying your employees with these questions and see how many responds as a yes to all these questions, and then perhaps do some analysis around it, just to drill down to some core problems which you can readily address. The next data is on the ability to bounce back after a hardship. Now, this is such an insightful data because we just had another economic disaster due to the COVID-19, which impacted so many people and business worldwide. The impact has been more severe than the Great Recession of 2008. Some of you might remember. All these economic crises are not one time though, but it has kept happening, like the Great Depression in 1930s, or if you remember the Y2K issue at the start of 21st century, which by the way did good to India and the IT sector, but overall it caused a lot of issues financially and economically around the world. Now, it's a separate debate on why so many stock market crashes have happened. I will probably do a dedicated video on that next year. But for now, let us understand that during these crises, more or less every company suffers. And it is those who could withstand the storm and bounce back strongly once the crisis is over are the ones which can be termed as strong organizations with solid cultural foundations. Now, the ability of an organization to bounce back is basically the ability of the leaders and employees of that organization to bounce back. Because at the end of the day, organizations are not simply made of bricks or glasses or data centers or machines, right? Organizations are made of people and run by people. So Gallup went ahead with this question to employees of various organizations on whether, generally thinking, are you always or usually or sometimes or rarely or never able to bounce back fully after illness, injury or hardship, right? So the employees were asked this question whether after any hardship, maybe it's an illness or maybe it's an injury, maybe it's some sort of economic crisis, any sort of hardship, are you always bouncing back? Are you able to bounce back always after the situation? Or you usually bounce back after the situation, or you sometimes bounce back after the situation, or you rarely bounce back or never bounce back? That's basically the question that was asked to the employees. And this particular graph shows the result of only those employees who marked that question as yes, I am always able to bounce back. Now, among those employees who said I am always able to bounce back, 57% of the employees were found to be engaged, 45% were found to be not engaged, and 39% were found to be actively disengaged, right? So if you just turn the table around, so here as well you can see that engaged workforce are more likely to bounce back and steer your company out of hot waters. So here again, one more reason on why you should focus on culture building and engaging your workforce. I'm really thrilled to see these numbers coming out now because I have been harping on it for a very long time. And I feel glad that I have not wasted much time to start a movement around it last year to bring back people centricity and leadership and management approaches. These stats really drive home my convictions. Alright, so I have given you enough insights on engagement issues. Let me just turn your attention to why the engagement stats are so appalling. Who are primarily responsible for this mess? Is it our customers, or affluence in the society, or technology addictions, or maybe distractions, or leaders and managers, or any business model, or maybe any other socioeconomic issues? Now the finger is clearly pointing towards managers here. As you can see, 70% variance in team engagement were found to be due to managers. Once again proves my point. Now, during COVID-19, feedback has emerged to be a very, very critical factor in driving engagement. And even in that, meaningful feedback scored higher in importance and turned out to be a very key differentiator. So here in this graph, it shows that when employees were asked whether they have received a meaningful feedback in the past 7 days from their managers, and they were asked to rate on a 5-scaler where 5 means most likely to have received a meaningful feedback and 1 means least likely to have received a meaningful feedback from their managers. Those employees who rated 5 out of 5 in this question, their data was then correlated with the earlier engagement index that Gallup produced. And then it was concluded that 71% of those employees were engaged at work. 71% of the employees who said that they got meaningful feedback from their managers in the past 7 days were found to be engaged at work during the COVID-19 period. And those employees who rated this question anywhere between 1 and 4, only 26% of them were found to be engaged. Please note that over here I'm talking only about meaningful feedback, not feedback for the sake of feedback. Feedback which is meaningful to the employee, feedback that is easily understood, feedback which I term as smart. Not literally the word smart, but I'll let you know later on. I would not like to, anyways, spend a lot of time explaining what SMART model is, or how to provide meaningful feedback, because I did 2 dedicated video back in January and February this year only on feedback. I released it in 2 parts, and it was basically a part of my First Time Manager, a complete guide playlist, and I did it on YouTube intentionally so that it will be available to everyone free of cost. So if you're really into it, then you can check those out. I will put the links down below in the description for your convenience. But before I go into the next stats, let me quickly summarize what is smart feedback, because I just spoke about the smart feedback. So many of you might be wondering what SMART is. SMART is basically the SMART, SMART. So S stands for specific, M stands for measurable, A stands for actionable, R stands for relevant. So there's no room for generic feedback that managers are used to providing. Feedbacks needs to be very relevant and customized for the person. And finally, T stands for time bound. So let me repeat this once again. Feedbacks needs to be smart. Feedbacks needs to be specific, measurable, actionable, relevant, and time bound in terms of implementation. Keep that in mind at least. The next interesting stats that got discussed was the comparative results in terms of feedback given to remote workers versus feedback given at office. Now, as you all are aware that COVID-19 forced a lot of organizations to switch to work from home, and a large number of employees were working remotely. The Gallup study showed that people who were working remotely for about half a day per week. All right, just about half a day per week. 31% of those people got weekly feedback from their managers. And as the number of remote working days increased per week, the feedbacks kept on decreasing. People who work for 4 or more days per week remotely, only 21% of them got weekly feedbacks from their managers. So there is definitely a trend seen in the feedbacks getting reduced when the physical distance is increasing between managers and employees. Now, to add to this, 2 out of 10 employees said that their manager provides meaningful feedback to them, and 3 out of 10 employees said that the managers help them to set their work priorities right. Now, here also the problem is not actually remote working or work from home working. The problem is managers' inability to adapt to the changing situation quickly. Now, the next stats is even more interesting. 3 questions were asked. Question number 1, does your manager ignores you? Question number 2, does your manager focuses on your weakness? Question number 3 was, does your manager focuses on your strength? Now, people who felt managers ignores them, basically it means that they do not get much time or attention or feedbacks from their managers, so they feel ignored. Only 2% of them were found to be engaged. People who felt that their managers majorly focuses on their weakness during the feedback sessions, 45% of those employees were found to be engaged. And those people whose managers focused on the strengths of the people, showered a lot of praises and kind of motivated the employee to do better, 61% were found to be engaged. Now, it is very clear looking at these stats that who is the winner, right? There's no rocket science there. Those managers who focused on the strength more than the weakness of an employee during feedback sessions has managed to engage more people. However, there was one more interesting revelation in this survey. It proves what I said back in January this year during the feedback training. Even those managers who gave feedback and focused on weakness were still able to engage a lot of employees. Now, 45% were found to be engaged, wherein manager gave them negative feedbacks, during the feedback sessions, versus those who chose not to give feedback at all. Now, we can all understand a difference of 45% to 61%. So managers who gave negative feedback where 45% of the employees were still engaged, and managers who gave positive feedback focused on the strength, 61% of the employees were engaged. So the gap is around 15%. But how can you explain a gap of over 43%? When only 2% employees were found engaged when manager did not give them feedback or they felt ignored. You all might be thinking that I'm beating my own drums way too much here, but it's really my excitement more than anything else here, to see what I said months back translating into real results now. I said multiple times that managers must give feedbacks, even if it's negative feedback. We all must give feedback. You will still be able to connect and engage people. Something is better than nothing at all, right? So at least start. You can always get better on your feedback skills along the way. I hope I'm just making myself amply clear here. Alright, so this brings me to the final segment. What the future managers need to focus and do better than the old school managers. What did the workforce value 20 years back, and what does the workforce values now? Now, Gallup brings us 6 pointers, which each and every manager or any aspiring manager of today must keep in mind and must practice to focus and prioritize each day. At the end of the day, we must remember that what is people management? It's all about managing the people, right? So if people's priorities change over time, then why will managers' priority won't change? right? It's very scientific and logical. Managers these days are failing in spite of their degrees and certificates and MBAs because the workforce and the generation has changed, but management styles and approaches have not. So basically these two pieces are not fitting. Now let's look at this, these 6 areas where priorities have changed, as per Gallup surveys and study. In the past, right, it was all about my paycheck. What's my salary? What's my bonus? What will I get, right? But now we are seeing a transformation in that trend. Now we are saying that the current generation and the future generation which is coming up is bending more towards my purpose, right? How can I add value to this organization? What is my purpose, right? This generation and the coming generation is moving more towards from my paycheck to my purpose. Number 2 is the past generation used to focus on my satisfaction, right? So we used to talk about employee satisfaction, right? HR used to concentrate on fun activities and stuff, right? So people used to focus on satisfaction of employees. But now the situation is changing and the generation is focusing on or valuing more on development. You have internet right now, you have social media right now, you have affluence in societies right now. So satisfaction you can get outside the work as well. You don't need a manager to satisfy you. You don't need you don't need to hunt for satisfaction in the workplace. But people are more into purpose. People are more into how can my manager help me to develop my skills? How can my manager help me to progress in my career? So people are more concerned about development rather than satisfaction right now, because satisfaction any which ways they're getting it from many sources. Number 3 is there's a shift in culture wherein in the past we used to have a boss culture, right? So the shift is from my boss to my coach. The current generation is preferring a coach more than a boss. Number 4 is the change from my annual review to my ongoing conversations, right? This is also a trend that I have been seeing, that the current generation of workforce is not too eager and concerned, or they don't show much interest in the annual review, but they have more interest in the ongoing conversations with their colleagues and managers, right? The current relationship, the current bond, the current connect with the managers. They're more into that rather than annual review. Number 5 on the list is the shift from my weakness to my strength. People are liking those managers who are focusing on employee strength rather than weakness. And number 6 on the list is the shift from my job to my life. Yeah, this is also very interesting. So, 20 years back, 30 years back, the relative affluence in the society was not that much that we have right now. And maybe after 30 or 40 years, the affluence in the society will increase, because there are countries like China and India that's coming up. The economy is booming there. So, the affluence in the society primarily existed in the Western world, but now we are seeing it is also coming in the Eastern world, right? So with more affluence coming into the society, this shift is very natural, that people are more concerned about holistically their life elements rather than only job and their paycheck, right? So these are the 6 elements that Gallup has found wherein management style can adapt and it can help them to motivate and inspire people. So in a nutshell, the need of the hour is for the boss to become a coach. And that's what this generation really respects, expects as well, and even like. They want their manager to become a coach who will be interested in their development, a coach who will be good at setting up expectations very clearly, a coach who will provide all the necessary tools and materials to the employee to become successful, a coach with whom they can form a very deep, meaningful relationship. So talking about coaching, managers need to focus on 3 elements of coaching which can really help them to transform themselves from a boss to coach. All right, but before I get there, I would just like to turn your attention to this line on the top where it says that when systems and processes makes it difficult for people to get their work done, leadership loses credibility. But when employees can achieve what you ask them to achieve, you will start to see the culture you want to build. Right? It's very important. So, I would just like to take you back. Yeah, I just wanted to take you back to this set of 12 questions. Of course, these are 12 questions, but during the webinar, we were discussing about out of this 12, focusing on 12 metrics is of course very difficult and almost impossible sometimes. But out of this 12, what does Gallup recommends to focus on? All right, what are those critical few that if you can focus quickly, you can quickly turn things around, or at least start to turn things around. So as per Gallup, question number 1 was I know what is expected of my work. This question scored pretty high on their list. Let me just highlight this. Yeah, this question scored pretty high on their list. They said that employees who said a yes to these questions, they selected 5 questions. So employees who selected a yes to these 5 questions were found to be more resilient, more engaged, and as a result of which the overall organization were found to be more resilient during hard times like COVID situation or recession. They were found to be more resilient and they were able to bounce back quickly and strongly. So they observed a lot of organizations who were able to bounce back after some economic crisis or share price drop, especially the Great Recession and the Y2K. And of course, they are also observing companies who are able to bounce back quickly post-COVID. So these 5 questions were the key differentiator, right? So I just want to quickly touch base upon that. Number 1 was, I know what is expected of me at work, right? Number 2 was, I have the materials and equipment that I need to do my work right. Okay, and this second question, I just came back to this slide because of the line that I read in the other slide. If you look at this question, it's basically the same thing, right? So if I give a target during a feedback, if I give a target to an employee to achieve, and if it is not an achievable target, if it is difficult and employee does not have the process and tools and the equipments and machines to get to that target, the employee of course will not taste success. And if you do not taste success frequently, of course your engagement level drops. Question number 2 were also found to be a very key differentiator, that I have the materials and equipment I need to do my work right. And then question number 3 was also very critical, that at work I have the opportunity to do what I do best every day. All right, so a lot of organizations tries to force an employee to do a particular work where the employee does not have the skill or interest, right? But good organizations or great organizations wherein we have highly engaged employees always try to map people in the right places. They try to put people in divisions or departments where the employee has interest in, or at least some sort of passion or skill there, right? So they try to put the right person in the right place. Question number 3 also turned out to be a very key differentiator. And then there were a couple of other questions that Gallup found were key differentiator out of this 12. Fourth one was question number 8, that is, the mission or purpose of my organization makes me feel that my job is very important. And this is what I was talking about, that there is a shift in mindset in the current generation. People are more into purpose and what they can do for the organization, how quickly they can add value to the organization. People are more into the developmental and purpose aspect right now, rather than only salary or promotions and all this stuff. And number 5 question, or the 5th question, which was very critical, is basically the question number 9 on the list, which is, my associates or fellow employees are committed to doing quality work. So these 5 questions were found to be the key differentiator in making resilient employees and resilient organizations who were able to bounce back strongly after a crisis, be it a recession or any other economic crisis, or even we're observing COVID right now. All right, so as I was saying, that there were three elements of coaching that managers can focus on to get better at, and it will help them to transform themselves from a boss to coach. All right, there are three elements. One is establish expectations with the employees. That's one critical element of coaching. Number two element is continually coach, right? A coach never gets tired, right? A coach never stops giving feedback. A coach is always behind the employee. That's basically what it means to be continually coaching someone. And the third aspect is create accountability. All right, and then they go on to give some more insights for those three aspects of coaching, which helps to drive engagement and thus performance, because at the end of the day, it is the engagement which drives performance. Performance does not drive engagement. It's the engagement that will drive performance. Contrary to all this coaching aspect, let's also look at what normally the boss is like, right? So let's say we are talking about a coach should establish expectation. But if you look at the same characteristic in a typical boss, right, or old school manager, then a boss is basically or generally very unclear with misaligned expectations with the employees. That's also one of the study that Gallup did, and it came out very strongly. Similarly, the second aspect of the coach was continually coach someone, but versus this, if we compare the attitude of boss, it's more it was found more on the ineffective and infrequent feedback side. And also on the third aspect where it says create accountability, on the boss end, it was found that normally the old school managers, or what we term as boss, is unfair in evaluation, and misplaced accountability is also observed. Let us quickly also look at some more insights that Gallup provided in these three aspects of coaching. And that was when we talk about established expectation of the employees, it's more to do with role and relationship orientation. And then when we talk about continually coach someone, we talk about having a quick connect with an employee every now and then, having a check-in in place with the employee, and doing developmental coaching. So having a quick connect, having a check-in, and doing a developmental coaching with the employee. That comprises what we say continually coach someone. And the third aspect where we say create accountability, right? That's basically meaning that you have a progress review in place, whether it's weekly or monthly or quarterly, have a progress review in place, because I spoke about the SMART model of feedback, right? It has to be measurable, right? And the moment it is measurable, you need to review the progress and get those accountability and responsibility in the right places, right? So you give feedback and focus on what the employees has achieved in that span of time rather than what the employees has missed out. You will talk about what are the stuff that employees were supposed to do and they missed out, but you will focus more on what the employees were able to achieve. That will basically motivate them to do the stuff that they could not do in the next review. Now, Gallup has also uploaded a training video on Vimeo on how you can transform from a boss to coach with a lot of scientific stats and data. But let me inform you that it is a paid course, so if you're interested, you can invest in yourself. But if you are short on money, I do recommend that you can take a look at the feedback and engagement videos that I uploaded months back before all this data came out. And since that will give you much more insights, and maybe you can get some pretty good takeaways. All right. So all in all, hope you have found today's episode insightful and interesting, and I hope that you will start working on changing your mindset if you're a manager, and work on feedbacks and engagement, and just try to do away with your ego at workplace. If you're a manager or leader, you will do much better as a manager or leader. I thank you for your time, and until next time, take care and goodbye.